The Metropolitan Police will reinvestigate its decision to charge TV presenter Caroline Flack with assault as new witness evidence may be available.
The TV star struck her boyfriend while he slept and was facing prosecution when she killed herself in February 2020.
Well, the Crown Prosecution Service originally recommended that Caroline be cautioned, but the Met appealed that decision and it was overturned. And it's a decision that was incredibly controversial, with Caroline's mother suggesting her daughter was only charged because of her celebrity status. Well, joining us now is former Metropolitan Police detective Peter Bleksley. Very complex case, this one, but I almost think, you know, if Caroline's mother, late Caroline's mother, is sort of pushing for this to be reinvestigated, perhaps to sort of exonerate her daughter, that maybe be careful what you wish for.
Well, Caroline's mother has been very particular about this point, and she does want that decision investigated. It's a pretty narrow kind of investigation that's going to take place here. It is simply to discover who said what and what happened with regards to appealing the CPS decision not to charge Caroline. That's what the Met are going to be looking at. They're marking their own homework because 4 allegations were made to the Independent Office of Police Conduct, but they've said on 3 accounts there's nothing to see here. But this last count, they've sent it back to the Metropolitan Police for their own Department of Professional Standards to carry out this narrow kind of parameter, particular investigation into this one aspect.
If you look at the inquest and if you go back to press reports, I mean, what happened was she suspected that her boyfriend, Lewis Burton, was cheating on her. According to reports, he was asleep when the allegation is she smashed him over the head with her mobile phone. Some reports said she smashed him over the head with a lamp. She said she accidentally flipped him with a mobile phone and didn't mean any harm. I know that when the cops got there, the place was covered in blood. Lewis Burton furiously rang the police because he was bleeding profusely. They were shocked by what they found when they got there. Now, my point is, Peter, you know, all due sympathy for Caroline. What a tragedy that she died. But the law is the law. You can't go around hitting people. She said she did it by accident. That calls for a trial, doesn't it?
Well, that is the way that allegations or charges get tested, in a court. So the evidence on both sides of whatever case or argument it might be can be heard, and either a jury or a magistrate can come to a decision upon that. Sadly, of course, with Caroline tragically dying at such a tender age, that hearing will never happen. There was, of course, a coroner's inquest, but that merely establishes cause of death. It doesn't explore all the other evidence that surrounds this case.
I mean, I think what is such a pity here is, you know, surely we can just let Caroline rest in peace. I, as a woman, have a great amount of sympathy for her. Like, I'm not condoning using physical violence against them to the extent that she may and may not have done, but she seemed a very troubled woman. She definitely felt extremely insecure in that relationship. The veracity of her claims, whether or not her boyfriend was cheating on her or not, perhaps we'll never know. But, you know, there's part of me that just thinks this is wholly, wholly tragic, and redigging it is just going to end up all over the newspapers again, which is in many respects what sort of pushed her over the edge.
Her death will always remain a tragedy, but of course it's her own mother, Caroline's own mum, that has made these complaints originally to the IOPC, one of which has now been referred back to the Met. And I've spent a lot of time with those who have lost a loved one to murder, for example, and they always are seeking answers. They have the torment of losing a loved one for their entire lives, but so often little crumbs of comfort can be found in getting answers to the questions that they have.
I was a reporter in America for quite a long time, and I covered two cases in particular that prove over there, at least, if you're a celebrity and you end up in court, you've got a good chance of getting off. I covered the O.J. Simpson trial. There's no doubt that guy killed his wife, and yet he was acquitted. Also, Christian Brando, the son of Marlon Brando, shot a guy straight through the back of the head and got manslaughter and about 4 months in a club fed with a recommendation that he got therapy. That's what happens in the States. What Mrs. Flack is alleging is that it's the opposite here, that actually coppers in particular are very keen to nab celebrities, high-profile cases. She says that if Caroline was not famous, if she was not the host of Love Island, etc., she was just Joe Soap in the street, that the police would not have pursued that. Do you find that the police do have a different attitude to famous people?
Well, back in the day when I was a detective, say in the 80s, for example, and we were on the drug squad, that particular squad had a history of relishing in arresting celebrities. Yeah. Mick Jagger, members of the Beatles, many others. And in fact, I arrested Phil Lynnett's drug dealer not long after Mr. Lynnett had sadly died. So I think, of course, policing's moved on dramatically since those days, but it will be very interesting to see what was the rationale for not accepting the decision of the CPS, to not hand out a caution and to particularly dig their heels in and say, we want to charge this young woman. It will be very interesting, number one, what the rationale behind it was, and number two, who pushed for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a really distressing situation all around. And I hope that actually, if this does happen, that Mrs. Flack may get some sort of peace from this, because, you know, as you said, she must be living in torment following the suicide of her daughter.
I don't mean to sound hard-hearted, but I don't think, I certainly think if you go around smashing people around the head when they're asleep, that requires legal action.
None of us would ever condone violence of any sort, unless it was in the sporting arena, of course. No, and of course, there is a huge problem in this country with violence against women and girls, domestic violence, things that happen behind closed doors. And of course, on some occasions, men can be victims as well.
Well, we're going to have to thank you very much,
Thanks,
Peter Bleksley.
Peter.
Fantastic as always.